All right, let's dive into one of the most intense and powerful stories of faith ever told, the trial of Abraham. This is a moment that pushed belief to its absolute breaking point, and its echoes are still felt thousands of years later.
So let's just start with the command that kicks this whole thing off. Just try to put yourself in Abraham's shoes. He waited 100 years for this son, Isaac, and then he hears this. I mean, these words must have been completely, utterly incomprehensible.
And that really is the first part of our story, the command itself. And it's so much more than just a difficult instruction. It was a paradox. Think about it. Every other message he'd received from God was about comfort, about a promise. This was something else entirely.
So you have to wonder, what was going through his head? This wasn't just a challenge to his love for Isaac. No, this seemed to just shatter the very foundation of everything he had been taught and everything he had spent his life preaching.
Okay, this really lays out just how impossible Abraham's situation was. Theologically, he'd spent a century preaching against human sacrifice. Logically, sacrificing Isaac would completely destroy God's own promise about his descendants. And then, emotionally, it's just monstrous. There were absolutely no easy answers here. So what does he do? This brings us to the journey itself. And this is where the tension really starts to build. Because despite this crushing command, Abraham doesn't argue. He doesn't hesitate. He just gets up early the next morning and begins this quiet 3-day trek to a mountain he doesn't even know. The fact that this took 3 days is so important. This wasn't some rash decision made in the heat of the moment. He had 3 full days to think about it, to doubt, to turn back. And yet, with every single step, he just keeps going. And then that heavy silence is just shattered by this question from Isaac. It's so innocent, so logical. He sees the fire, he sees the wood, but something's missing. And his simple question just cuts right to the horrifying truth of what they're doing. It's absolutely heart-wrenching. And Abraham's response? Wow. This is just an incredible moment of pure, unwavering faith. In the midst of what must have been unimaginable agony, he says these words. They're a comfort to his son, for sure, but they're also this profound declaration of trust in a plan that he cannot possibly understand. And so they finally arrive. This is the climax, the altar on Mount Moriah. And what's really fascinating is that tradition holds that this exact spot would later become the site of Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. It's as if this ground was destined for these kinds of sacred, world-changing encounters. And just look at how methodical this is. He builds the altar, he arranges the wood, he binds his own son. Each step is done so deliberately, so calmly. It's chilling. It just underscores how total his obedience is. The tension here is almost unbearable. The historian Josephus actually offers us a possible glimpse into what Abraham might have said in that moment. He suggests Abraham framed this horrific act not as a loss, but as a sacred offering, a way for Isaac to be with God, which in turn would bring a different kind of comfort to Abraham.
And then we come to this, the final moment. The knife is raised. In this one single action, faith has completely overtaken reason, natural love, and even the instinct to protect his child. This is the absolute peak of the trial. And then, at the very last possible second, a voice from heaven. Just as the unthinkable is about to happen, the entire story pivots. This is that stunning, divine intervention, the conclusion to the test. And the voice just cries out, stopping everything. The test was never about the death of Isaac. It was about the heart of Abraham. It was about his willingness to trust. And with his hand raised, he had proven that faith beyond any doubt. And sure enough, just as he had prophesied to his son, a substitute is provided. The ram caught in the thicket is the offering. Abraham's words, God will provide, came true. You can just feel the immense release of tension in that moment.
So, what's the legacy of all this? What do we take away from such an intense story? Well, let's explore why this trial of faith has had such an enduring power for thousands of years. I think the key takeaway from this whole drama is that true faith is sometimes defined by how we act when we can't possibly see the big picture. It suggests that real obedience isn't always about understanding the why, but about trusting the who. So the story ends not with trauma, but with this incredible, overwhelming relief. You just have to wonder what that walk back down the mountain was like, the conversation they must have had. Or maybe it was just a profound silence between a father and son who had just been through the unimaginable together. And all of this leaves us with that huge, enduring question. Where is the line between faith and reason? This ancient trial forces every generation, including ours, to ask that question. How do we navigate those moments when what we believe seems to contradict everything we know? It's a question that is just as powerful today as it was on that mountain thousands of years ago.